All right, so this is, I think, closer to where we left off before spring break. We were given an equation and we were graphing lines by finding points and or finding the intercepts. So again, no matter what kind of function you have or equation you have, you can always graph it by putting a value in for one of the variables and solving for whatever you have left over. So if you put something in for x, you have your y left and you solve for y, and then you get your xy point. If you put a value in for y, then you have your x left over and you solve for that. And then as far as the intercepts go, okay, we want to remember what that meant. So we have an x-intercept and a y-intercept. So that intercept kind of means like where you intersect something. So it means, where is this line going to cross the x-axis? Where is this line going to cross the y-axis? So if we had a line that goes through right here, right? Let's just say, we know that since this is on the x line, that our x is 4, what would our y value be at this point? 0, correct. If we had a line that was going through 6 on the y-axis, you had a point here, so we know our y is 6 at this location, and what is our x value? 0, great. So what's that value we want to think about when we think about intercepts? 0, there we go. So 0 is usually a good thing to use, but again, it just depends on your equation. So let's look at this equation. And let's look at this cat that is interrupted. All right, this is my cat Ace. Say hi, Ace. Hi. I like to be in everybody's way. All right. So one thing you want to be careful of is that you're putting in one value at a time. So you put something in for x, solve for y. You put something for y, you solve for x. So let's get the intercepts of this line. So if I put 0 in for x, here comes the cat again. If I put something in for x, that means I'm going to have y left over. So that means it's going to have finding out where it's crossing the y-axis. So I'm going to put 0 in to this equation for x, and that leaves me with my y left over. So 0 is gone. I can subtract it if I want to, but that's not going to change it. So I'm left with 3y equals -9. And so I divide both sides by 3, and I get -9 divided by +3 gives me a negative. So keeping your negatives and positives in check are really important. So that means I have this point. When x is 0, my y is -3. So when x is 0, no lefty righty, my y is -3, so I'm down here. So that's where it's crossing the y-axis. So this is the y-intercept. Let's see where it crosses the x-axis. So in order to do that, I'm going to keep my x, but I'm plugging in y, or I'm plugging in 0 for y. So 3 times 0 is 0. So that's kind of gone. And I'm left with x equals -9. So really no math after that, right? You got it. So this means that my x is -9, my y is 0. So when I graph that, this is my x-axis, -9, so I go to the left, make a point there, and I don't go up or down any, right? Because that's the intercept. So because I have my point here on my x-axis, this is my x-intercept. before we left for break, a lot of you guys were doing all the right math, but flip-flopped these x and y intercepts around. So let's try a third point for this equation. So when we look at this equation, you know, again, you can pick any numbers that are reasonable. I want to put 100 in here because my lines only go to 10. But if I put a value in for x, that means I'm going to have to move it and then combine it with this -9, which is totally fine. That means that whatever I'm left with over here, I'm going to have to divide it by 3. Okay? So in this case, I want to think, well, the end result over here, it would be nice if I can easily divide it by 3. So what numbers are divisible by 3? That means our multiples. So we know we can divide 3, right? 6, 9, 12, and we could do it plus or minus. So we have a lot of options. So if I choose a number for x, combine it with this -9, I want that value to be either positive or negative 3, 6, 9, 12, you know, maybe higher, depending. So let's do, let's say I want to make this -12. So that means I'm going to have to subtract something from here and combine it with this -9 to make -12. So what number would that make that happen? Well, that's if x is positive 3. Now, this is not something I, assume everyone's going to do off the top of your head. This is just something that takes a second to just play around with it. I mean, you put something in, it doesn't work, try something else. That doesn't work, try something else. It's not the end of the world. All right, so I plugged in 3 for x. I'm left with my y. I subtract the 3. That makes it go away. And I'm down 9. I lose 3. That gets me to that -12. And sometimes what I notice, you want to be careful when you're solving. If you subtract something here, you subtract it here. Sometimes I'm noticing you guys are subtracting and then adding, or you flip-flop the signs. So it has to maintain balance. If you take 3 away from here, you have to take 3 away from here. Okay? You don't switch, you're adding and subtracting. And then, so now we're left with 3y equals -12. We divide both sides by 3. We get y equals -4. So hopefully, this is going to be our checkpoint, right? Just make sure we're doing our stuff right. So when x is 3, y is -4, this needs to fall along this line, right? So let's cross our fingers and hope that it does. So when x is 3, y is -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, that looks like it falls there, right? So we have our 3 points, and for whatever reason, did not grab a ruler. So I will do my best. And we see that we have that beautiful line. Not too bad, right? All right. Let's try this one, which I know all of you love, fractions. So this is something that's in slope-intercept form, and we're going to talk about that next. But in case you do have to find points with something like this, make it easier on yourself. Okay? A good point, whatever you're going to put in here for x, you're going to multiply it with this 1 and then divide it by 2. So what that means is you want to think in numbers that, multiplying by 1 doesn't change anything. So you want to think in numbers that when you put it in for x, that is easily divisible by 2. So that means your even numbers, right? And a good even number, in this case, does happen to be 0. Let's put 0 in for x. So anything times 0 is 0. So that means when x is 0, your y is 3. So when x is 0, no lefty righty, your y is 3. So we have that point. Okay. So we have that intercept. And let's do our y-intercepts, practices fraction stuff. Let's put a 0 in for y, see where that other intercept is. And so that means we're going to solve for x. Don't let a fraction stop you, okay? If you're in intermediate algebra, you're going to have to take college algebra. If you're going to have to take college algebra, that means you're going to have to know how to handle fractions. You're going to have to know how to handle fractions in intermediate algebra too. Okay. So we have to solve for x, regardless of whether this was 1/2 x or 2x. We want to get this by itself, meaning we want to get rid of anything added or subtracted to it first. So we're going to subtract this 3. 0 minus 3 is a -3. And we have equals 1/2 x. So again, think about this as what is actually happening. Something is being, whatever we put in for x is being divided by 2. 2 is on the bottom. That means the division. So how do we undo division? Right, we multiply. We want to get rid of this 2. So we take this 2, and to get it out of the bottom, we multiply it up. It goes away when you move it. So we have multiplying it by here makes that 2 go away from that bottom. And if we had another number other than 1, right, we would have to divide by whatever stuck to x. But since it's 1, anything divided by 1 is still the same. So we know that when y is 0, our x is -6. So this is going to be our x-intercept. So we go to -6 and 0. Okay. So let's get another point. Let's plug something in for x. And then once we do that, it's already solved for y. So we'll say y equals blah, 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 whatever we get. So whatever we have to put in for x, we want to make sure we can divide it by 2, right? We can take half of whatever we put in for x. So this means we want to put in even numbers. So what are even numbers? We got 2, 4, 6, 8, right? Plus or minus. So let's go crazy and put in a +6. So when x is a +6, we're going to see what happens. So half of 6 is 3. 3 plus 3 is also 6. What? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So when x is 6, our y is also 6. Cool. And we see that these 3 points are consistently on that line. Try to make this connect. All right. Not too bad. So plugging in points does rely on algebra, does rely on those basic algebra rules that we talked about, okay? So that doesn't change, and just because there's a fraction, that doesn't mean you can't do it. All right, so that should be it for our review, and the next time you see me, it'll be new stuff. So I will see you soon.